So, Mädels. How to be a shooting threat when you can't shoot. Bin ich mal gespannt. Wir haben ja gerade gehört, Janis läuft nicht so gut vor 9 Tagen. Janis und Chris Middleton waren halt auf dem Cover. Gucken wir uns mal an. Was Thinking Basketball darüber zu sagen hat.
There's a space. He's got Allen to the corner. And on the move, the wrong guy on the side. That's a heck of a play.
That is a heck of a play, but not because it was a big dunk. This is a non-shooter spotting up behind the three-point line and turning himself into a massive threat, and that's become one of the most important trends in the NBA today. The three-point revolution in basketball has placed a premium on outside shooting. The best guards can warp the court in ways that we've never seen, and big men who shoot threes add an extra spacing dimension that was rare to find in previous eras. Because defenses have to worry about all that three-point shooting, they've been stretched out in ways we've never seen before, opening up the lane for teammates. As a result of that, non-shooters invite defenses to leave them alone and defend the basket against dangerous ball handlers. A few weeks ago on the More Thinking Basketball channel, we looked at how teams are defending Zion Williamson by ignoring his teammates who don't shoot well so they can help in the paint against his drives.
Also im Endeffekt genau das gleiche, was Philly gemacht hat bei Jokic.
Which means that spot-up shooters who can't really shoot.
Ja, das haben die ja früher immer ganz oft gemacht. Clock the lane, Digga. Pack den größten Mann nach hinten, damit egal wer da reindriven will, er ist immer schwer.
Become kind of an offensive liability, where standing in place actually makes it easier to ignore them and help a more dangerous teammate. But what if they don't stand in place? Instead of standing 25 feet away and taking an inefficient shot, poor shooters can cut toward the hoop into all that.
Da aber auch wirklich ganz wichtig, dass er im richtigen Moment losläuft. Nicht, dass er anfängt. Warte, hallo.
Open space.
Nicht, dass er anfängt, wenn Steph Curry jetzt hier oben lang läuft, dass er da anfängt reinzulaufen, weil dann nimmt er im Endeffekt, wenn der Verteidiger es mit ihm sieht, noch mehr Platz für Steph Curry weg und ihn auch gleichzeitig. Dass er jetzt in dem Moment, wo er auf Steph Curry war, reinkattet, ist ganz, ganz, ganz wichtig, Digga. Und das ist halt auch hoher Basketball-IQ.
To all that open space. Draymond Green has made just 29% of his wide-open threes in the last 3 years, so instead of helping the defense by standing still and throwing it off the rim a bunch, Green can basket cut his way into a higher percentage look.
Schön.
The idea of cutting towards space is as old as basketball itself, and players have been slicing into openings like this forever. Here's a play from the 2000 Western Finals where Shaq is doubled and Robert Horry cuts right behind the double team instead of spotting up from three. As 3-point
damals war das aber auch noch normaler, ne?
Spacing became more prevalent, we'd see defenders zone up multiple shooters, so offensive players would back cut them when they weren't looking. Sometimes even 2 players would cut at the same time, forcing the weak side defender to pick one over the other.
Lol.
Good shooters use this tactic too. After Kawhi Leonard is trapped, Norm Powell is wide open in the corner, and he ends up with a clean look that rims out. So on the very next
Er hat aber ohne Dip geshootet, ne? Er hat direkt hier oben gefangen und direkt losgelassen.
possession,
Sehr schwer.
the Clippers are in an identical alignment. The Sixers trap Kawhi again, and this time Powell cuts into that open space and ends up with a much easier three-point play. So this certainly isn't a novel concept, but it's increasing in popularity as defenses have figured out how to defend a more spaced out floor. A few years back, when James Harden and the Rockets started spamming pick and roll, the offense didn't need to move as much because they had defenses at their mercy. But whenever there's a weak shooter out there, the rules change a little. The Celtics helped way off Bruce Brown in last year's playoffs as part of their scheme to shut down Kevin Durant. And when Boston wanted to throw a bunch of bodies at KD, Brooklyn made it easy for them to help and recover by remaining largely stationary. Here's a common way to aggressively defend pick and roll, with an extra defender sliding over into the driving gap, then recovering to the shooter, and I'd call that a semi-open shot. Compare that
schon
to this play where Evan Mobley helps toward the ball and the shooter cuts instead, and Mobley thinks he's still at the three-point line. This defensive tactic of sliding over to help and then recovering to the wing is hardwired into today's game. And defenders are often just jabbing at the ball as a deterrent with the intent to quickly recover out to that shooter. So when the wing shooter cuts at a 45-degree angle to the hoop, defenses aren't ready for it. This 45 cut has grown in popularity over the years as a way to counter defenses loading up on the ball, but it's also a way for weaker shooters to make themselves a threat behind the line. Here's a 32% wide open shooter, and his cut punishes the help and turns it into a layup. We talked about the Kings'
Aber die Leute halt damit rechnen, dass er einfach an der Dreierlinie stehen bleibt.
Best practices earlier this year, and 45 cuts are part of their movement-heavy system. So their good shooters can also use it as a counter. Mikal Bridges wants to stab at the ball handler, but he's really thinking about Kevin Huerter's shooting, so when he turns his head, Huerter takes off, and the timing is perfect because Bridges has no idea he left, and we get some smooth red velvet at the end of the play. These cuts can give an average three-point shooter gravity in a spot-up situation. Terrence Davis's defender is pulled right out of the driving lane by his 45 cut, and that lets Malik Monk get all the way to the rim.
Hat aber auch technisch stark gemacht.
This one is a cousin of the 45 cut, where a corner defender stunts toward the ball, so the cut comes along the baseline, and again, it's so powerful because the defender is expecting to recover to the line, not toward the paint. Here's a 45 cut with the action on the other side of the floor, and this changes the passing angle for the penetrator and creates a layup for a subpar spot-up shooter. So conceptually, what are we seeing here? First, the age-old idea of cutting into space, specifically when defenders turn and go to help, can weaponize spot-up shooters who aren't even good from behind the arc. And second, timing those cuts just right against a defender who thinks he's recovering to a stationary shooter can use his momentum against him for high percentage offense. Which brings us back to that Giannis dunk. The brilliance of that play is that Herb Jones doesn't have to worry about Giannis's shooting, is early on his key pick and roll help, and thinks he's recovering to a poor shooter, but Antetokounmpo flies right by him, and on the very next possession, they run the exact same pick and roll, and despite shooting just 30% on wide open threes, Giannis Antetokounmpo freezes Herb Jones just by standing in the corner.
Schlau.
These cuts are so devastating today because the floor is spaced out from all that shooting. These ideas wouldn't have the same effect back in the 80s when defenses weren't programmed to guard the three-point line and there was less space to cut into in the paint. Today, a big part of the game is how well perimeter players attack closeouts when the ball is swung to them and defenders recover to the three-point line. Here's that same pick and roll action we've seen with the wing defender, Anthony Edwards, pulled over to help, and instead of cutting, Dario Saric attacks Edwards' closeout by instantly putting it on the floor and driving for a layup. Some players take it a step further, starting their drive as the pass is in the air to give them a head start against the recovering defender. So if you're a subpar shooter spaced way out on the wing, you can still punish this basic pick and roll help by taking off with the pass so you're running in the opposite direction of your man, and that is a nightmare to stop. I've heard this technique called stampeding, where the attacker starts running on the pass to leave the closing defender in the dust, and these stampedes exist somewhere between the cuts
Ich glaube nicht, dass das Wort sich durchsetzen
we've
wird.
discussed and a traditional way to attack a closeout. It's basically the same concept that Giannis used to buckle Herb Jones, although he took about 3 full steps before he caught it. But just like a great back cut or 45 cut, it makes non-shooters dangerous against these rotations where they'd traditionally be liabilities as shooters. For a good shooter, it unlocks another dimension. Imagine leaving the deadly Darius Garland to go help, and as you recover to his shot, he's on the third step of his drive and just leaves you in the dust. So this technique asks the defender to move in 3 directions: toward the ball to help, back to the shooter to recover, and then toward the hoop, and that's hard to do. The Stampede is the latest weapon in the evolutionary arms race, where shooters can spot up, cut into space, or wait to use a defender's momentum against them as the ball arrives to extend their advantage.
Schlau gemacht.
While Giannis does spot up and start running early like this on occasion, Joel Embiid is a true stampeder, mixing his spot-up attempts with thunderous forays into the paint like this. And this is just a nasty curveball to soften defenders who might think about closing out so hard the next time. Embiid also has a really nice feel for when a defender is changing directions back out to him, and more bigs who can shoot are using this tactic as a change of pace, because it's hard for really big defenders to change directions so rapidly. At the team level, the Pelicans might be the unofficial stampeding kings, often having weaker shooters catch it on the run, and Herb Jones in particular uses the technique all the time, launching himself out of a cannon to blow by recovering defenders. They also have Zion Williamson, who deserves a capital S when he stampedes to the basket, but Zion is also the premier example of a non-shooter who can spot up, but then punish defenders if they shift their attention toward the ball. This is the same pick and roll help we've seen repeatedly in this video, just closer to the hoop. So Zion circles in from behind and turns it into a layup drill. He sort of combines it all. He's deadly when he catches it on the run, he cuts into open space, and if you sag off to help, he'll start moving before he catches it, and suddenly he's right at the rim. We're already in a movement-heavy era with a ton of complex 3-man actions and dribble handoffs that are inherently difficult to defend, so these stampedes and timely cuts are yet another offensive counter for defenses who were already struggling to stop teams who were largely stationary.
Das ist auch so schön gespielt.
I think this extra offensive dimension is one of the reasons why this is the most efficient offensive season in NBA history. Visit our extra channel.
War auch wieder ein sehr, sehr gutes Video. Ja, das müsst ihr euch merken, Jungs. Das machen wir ab morgen dann in 2K, ne?